Hello and welcome back to Gruesome Magazine. This is a new gruesome review. And I'm Thomas Mariani, and I'm here with the wonderful Adam Thomas. Adam, how are you this evening?
I'm fantastic. Hey guys.
Okay. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
So tonight we're talking about an interesting movie. We should note also this is going to be a bit different from the usual gruesome review because we've both seen the film, and we're going to hear we're going to be talking about, which is Bright, which is the first foray into Netflix doing a blockbuster film. It's a $90 million production. Has some big names in it, like Will Smith, of course, is our star, and it's directed by David Ayer, who's done stuff like End of Watch. He wrote Training Day, and he also did recently Suicide Squad.
Didn't he do Fury?
Yes, he did. He did do Fury,
Yeah,
amongst
Fury.
other things. And it's written by Max Landis, who is a very in-demand screenwriter in Hollywood, mostly known for stuff like Chronicle, and has had some interesting allegations pop up as of recent. We'll not mention that too much, because we're here to talk about the movie, which, Bright basic premise is in this world, sort of modern LA, but the twist is for, generations there have been orcs, who we're representing here as another minority, and, we follow mainly a cop played by Will Smith, who has recently been shot in the line of duty, thanks to the issues of his, the first orcish cop, who is played by, Joel Edgerton here. In the wake of Will Smith returning to the Force, there's also this mysterious sort of MacGuffin here that's a magic wand.
Yeah.
Which, they have to try and find. And, Adam, what did you think of Bright?
I did like the world building stuff, because it's not just orcs. I mean, there's clips where you see like a centaur cop. There's a dragon in the sky at one point. There's the fairies. There's the elves. There's when they're in the one, strip club and the one girl's eyes blink like a reptile. There's a lot of cool ideas here, and the makeup effects were great. And, it felt like all the tropes you've ever seen in cop movies like Training Day or End of Watch or any of those thrown in all together, and none of them executed as good as they were the first time.
Yeah, I would say I agree, though I even would have issue with some of the world building. This felt very much like they wanted to make it feel like orcs have existed for so long in this world, yet my big problem with the movie, honestly, is the fact that it just feels like they inserted fantasy characters into modern LA, to the point where, like, no real fantasy edge, I would argue, to even the human characters who would feel like they would have something like that. It just feels very much, especially with the very stereotypical depictions of LA gangbangers, which has always been a problem in David Ayer's movies. It feels like orcs and other fantasy characters and creatures inserted into this world. Like, there's a weird point where Will Smith references Shrek in this movie, and it's like, wait, so is Shrek like one of those old racist Disney cartoons at this point? Where it's like decried, but does that mean, because you'd figure if the orcs existed for so long, a movie like Shrek would probably be treated a lot differently in some regard. I don't know. They just brings up too many questions in many ways.
I definitely agree with you. Now, I like the idea, though, that it was almost like treated as commonplace. Like, these people have just been dealing with this for so long, it's normal. But whenever there was, when they would call back to the history of it, like, 2,000 years ago, or, the Dark One or whatever, there was no, explanation of any of it. The prophecy thing that happened.
It just comes out of nowhere.
Was this ever explained? And no, it wasn't. And that's, to me, that's the big problem in the movie. They have all these cool ideas, but they don't expand about any of them. They treat it like a normal cop drama, which it's not a cop drama. Like, it's a fantasy film.
I think it's trying to be all those things. And I think that's a problem with Max Landis' work, definitely, is that he's always been so much more of an idea person than I think ultimately he is in terms of execution of his scripts. Really, it just feels like this is on a paper an interesting idea of fantasy and our modern world kind of mixed together. But I think in execution, it just ends up being a jumbled mess of a movie with stuff like you mentioned, prophecies, and also at the same time really, I would argue, bad examples of world building, or even the social commentary I think is pretty awful. Right from the moment we get Will Smith saying, hey, fairy lives don't matter, it goes downhill from there.
I agree with you, but I think the heavy-handedness of it did sort of dwindle. It definitely started out that way, and again, another problem with the movie, there was no thorough line, but it did start out very heavy-handed, where, the orcs were a minority and it was very racist towards them. But once Jay Hernandez showed up and what happened, and then it was kind of over, and then it just became an action fantasy film. So I guess one of the other problems I have, they don't stick with any one idea. However, I will say, I really do wish that the lead roles were reversed. I think it'd be awesome to see Will Smith do something under makeup. And I think Joel Edgerton is a fantastic actor, and I'd like to see him take the forefront on something like this.
I don't know if I totally agree. I mean, I think my bigger problem with Will Smith here is he feels like the sort of modern Will Smith problem of he's trying to recapture that magic from say a Men in Black, or the roles that really made people enjoy him with the wisecracks, but at the same time
Bad Boys. It's Bad Boys 3. It's Bad Boys 3. Yeah.
And I'll take Joel Edgerton over Martin Lawrence any day. But, and even I thought Joel Edgerton was probably the most consistent character in the movie overall.
He stole the movie.
I felt his hesitation, his worry, and his desire to be a cop in a way that I felt far more invested in him than I did it with Will Smith at any point. Will Smith just seems very much like a douche of a character this whole movie in a way that he never was charming in the way Will Smith usually can be.
He was an asshole. You couldn't get behind his character. He was totally a scumbag and legitimately a racist. Mm-hmm. Where he did not want the orc in his car. He did not like it. And when he pulled up to his house, and he pulled up his house and Ernest was like, oh, I'll pick you up, blah, blah. And he gave him shit the entire time. Noomi Rapace, she was a compelling villain, but they did nothing with her. Because she legitimately looked like an elf, and those 3 elves were badass. But they did nothing with them.
I don't know if I would necessarily agree with them being badass. They felt like lesser versions of, say, the elf characters we got in Hellboy 2.
Well, I'm saying the action scenes, they were badass.
I don't necessarily agree with the action scenes either. I think this is one of David Ayer's least compellingly directed movies as well. I didn't find anything terrible, but I found it just very mediocre and competent. Yeah, it just it especially for a $90 million budget. Aside from the makeup and some of the CG stuff, I don't know really where that went.
Will Smith.
That's true.
He got at least 20 mil for doing it. I mean, we know that.
But I did want to ask: do you think Netflix, starting off here with a foot that admittingly a lot of people aren't huge fans of, this movie's being kind of savaged?
It's being destroyed.
Do you feel like Netflix could kind of go in interesting directions with a big budget movie style like this? I mean, they already announced a sequel that they're apparently going to do. I don't know if that's going to pan out necessarily.
It's going to happen.
Given some of the reception. But then again, they've said they're hemorrhaging money on stuff like this. Do you think that this is a sustainable model for a big blockbuster culture?
Let's face it. This is the way things are going to go. Everything's going to become streaming at this point. I mean, it's going to happen. I think Netflix might be a little too ahead of the curve. I think dropping $90 million on an idea as out there and crazy as this might have been a misstep on their point, because they have, not produced, but they have bought the rights to a lot of good films. Beasts of No Nation was amazing. Mm-hmm. And they've done a lot of good work, but for their first studio produced, basically $90 million movie, this is the route you took. And Will Smith as a lead actor, he's not bankable anymore. I mean, his last, how many movies have flopped?
Aside from Suicide Squad, really, it hasn't been very big.
Which, let's face it, Suicide Squad made him money because it was a comic book property, not because of Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He just dials it in. I think this might have been a mistake for their first one out the gate. I really do.
Well, I guess we should go ahead and go into our final thoughts then overall. Adam, your final thoughts, score, favorite scene for Bright.
Oh, boy. Final thoughts is it's an entertaining, bad movie. Once it starts, it doesn't stop as far as like the action and everything, which is not that well done. I mean, it's mediocre action, but it does not stop. Favorite scene is probably when Nick, the orc cop, is finally telling Will Smith what actually happened, because Will Smith thought that he sold him out. And just the emotion in his face under all that makeup was, I mean, Joel Edgerton stole the movie, like I said. A score, I'd give it a right down the middle 2.5.
Well, and for me, I would say I was really not a fan of this at all. I found it not just to be a very misguided movie on just a structural level and with this world, but I didn't really like most of the characters except for Joel Edgerton, and I ultimately thought it was probably... It was so ugly as well. It felt ugly in a way that didn't make me feel like I was in this grimy LA world. It just felt very unpleasant to watch, honestly. Yeah. I can see why people are hating it, because I'm really not a fan of it either.
Oh, I completely can understand, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
I would give it probably a 1.5 for me. And I would say my favorite scene is probably when Joel Edgerton actually tries to give Will Smith a ride, because I felt most of the emotion on his face, and it was supposed to...
2.5 might have been a little bit generous on my part, but like I said, I was generally just entertained. It's mindless entertainment, so it was better than I thought it was going to be.
Well, yes, that's Bright, and that's available on Netflix should you desire to see it. And I think we gotta go now, because we gotta run away from these orcs.
Be sure to visit GruesomeMagazine.com to listen to the other gruesome podcasts, Hard News Radio, and Decades of Horror. Also check out the Gruesome Magazine Quarterly, available in digital and print-on-demand format.